see. Yeah. All right. Did you get an invite, Johnny?
I got. Let's see how long ago. Oh, that came up. Accept. Those are old invites.
All right, I'm sending it to your Skype. I'm sending you the link. See if that works.
Okay. Did you get it, bud?
Yeah, you're in. Okay, cool. We're ready to go. I'm putting your book up here. Is that all right?
Yeah. We can do that.
We're just going to kind of roll through certain things and go through. So we're actually live on Google. I just would like to thank Johny Cirucci, author of Illuminati Unmasked, everything you know about the New World Order and how we'll beat it, for being on William Ramsey Investigates. It's a new show on Awake Radio. And Johnny, are you there?
I'm here, William. It's a pleasure too.
Awesome. Thanks for joining the show. We had spoken on the Ed Opperman report maybe 2 or 3 months ago now. It seems like a while back, but we covered a lot of stuff in your book. But I still would like people to get an idea of who you are, what brought you to write this book. I read the book. I loved it. It's a very thorough.
Broken transmission. You have me at all?
Are you? Pardon me? You still there? Johnny, are you with us? Johnny, can you hear me?
I got you.
Okay. So anyway, Johnny, please take it away. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came to write Illuminati Unmasked, please.
Oh, wow. Well, let's try and give you the Cliff Notes version. Passionate Italian immigrant, fourth generation immigrant. My family came from Italy, as I say, four generations ago, as a result of hard times there between the communists and the fascists. They just needed a new start, and they came to this country, to the East Coast, settled in New Jersey, had hard times there because there was a wave of Irish immigrants that had occurred before my family got here. And in my research, I recently found out that these waves of Catholic immigrants were being forced by purposeful hardship by Rome to leave their country and emigrate to populate in America, just as Hispanic Catholic immigrants are being invited and sometimes forced to emigrate legally and illegally into this country. It's open warfare. And that was 4 generations ago. And so as a result, my family ended up being very patriotic. When I say passionate, I mean passionate about our beliefs. And so I grew up wanting to express that patriotism by having a career in the military, and I was just not very focused. I had high aspirations, but was really kind of all over the place. So I ended up doing a lot of different things in the military. Enlisted Marine, then into the Army to become an officer, active duty Army, got out of the active duty Army and went into the National Guard. During this time, I was also very strong in my political beliefs, hard right of center, and tapped into all of the usual conservative, I say that with air quotes because I don't like that term. Implies that you're stuck in the mud and can't think freely for yourself. But to some degree, I guess I wasn't able to at that time. All the usual, stops for conservative ideology, the Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, and so forth. Okay. And I was frustrated because it began to be clear that America's problems were institutional problems, that our biggest enemies were inside our own borders. And I continued to get the same old song and dance from these conservative avenues and venues. Had this same awakening at the same time that had this awakening while I was in this process and eventually getting deployed to Iraq, that just really starting to question the so-called conservative media, especially with the advent of Barack Obama. His presidency, it seemed like the conservative outlets weren't questioning his background hard. It was almost as if they didn't want to uncover too much. And you had a man that was using 3 or more different aliases with a social security number from a state at Connecticut that he'd never been in. A background shrouded in mystery, and visiting Pakistan in the 80s when it was illegal to visit Pakistan. Implied connections to intelligence were there. And yet these venues, the Limbaugh, Levin, and so forth, weren't really pushing that. And it started to get me upset and make me wonder, were these guys part of the machine? Is just playing me? Well, it wasn't until the supposed killing of Osama bin Laden in 2011 that I finally just threw in the towel on mainstream / alternative conservative media, as these individuals continued to carry water for the Obama administration with the idea that they really did kill Osama bin Laden in 2011. It was clear that it was absolutely staged. And it's not to say that the team that went there, the SEAL Team 6 that went there, didn't actually go there and didn't actually kill somebody on site. But the idea that you would take the most valuable intelligence asset, the high-value target, the highest high-value target of the entire war on so-called global war on terror, shoot him on site and dump him in the ocean, was beyond ludicrous.
Right.
And it wasn't shortly after that I got some inside information from someone in the special operations community that confirmed that the real story wasn't what we were told by the media. And so that's when I threw in the towel on conservative media and really began to question it. And I will tell you that my experience in Iraq only added to my turmoil. I saw a country destroyed by war. I saw that our policies were absolutely counterproductive, that the infrastructure still hadn't been rebuilt after years of damage, and just it did turn that nation into a giant mess of chaos.
And where was your years of when you were in Iraq? And there's I'm hearing a tiny little bit of echo. So
okay, I can switch to headphones.
That'd be great. What years were you in Iraq?
That was give me a second. Get these headphones on.
No problem.
Oh, I guess 08, 09, somewhere around there. Most of the hardcore fighting was done, and let me plug in here. How's that? Is that any better?
Seems better, yeah. Seems much better.
Let's see here.
What did you actually see any fighting?
We did stability and support operations, mainly weapons, cache searches, key leader engagements, patrols. There were some IED incidents. They were using new munitions that were actually it's a Russian or an old Soviet munition that a grenade with a chute on it that was actually a shaped charge, and it wasn't like I'll be the long and short of it. I wasn't Audie Murphy, but I did spend that time outside the wire, so it's really not much worth talking about. Just it was an experience that changed me. Gotcha. Did I see things I really didn't want to see? Yes. But was I, holding an M4 in each hand? No. So it was.
How many years was it?
It was. I'm sorry, about 08, 09.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, so that kind of changed your perspective. You were probably you said you were kind of a card-carrying conservative. And then what did that experience in Iraq lead you to?
Well, it didn't stop me from being a passionate patriot, from loving my country. It made me question things more. It made me question the narrative more. What was I being told versus what was the truth? And this idea that jihad was this terrible threat, and yes, I absolutely did see evidence of a strong threat, an insurgent threat in Iraq, and had been briefed on it elsewhere in Afghanistan. But as I really looked around, I just saw a bunch of people that were trying to live. And I saw a lot of our policies, the United States government policies, United States Army policies were very counterproductive. They tended to make more enemies than they solved issues, than they actually brought security. And so this added to my concern that the biggest problems, the biggest enemies were on the inside in our own chain of command.
Interesting. And then
to get the book.
Well, tell me about what your kind of opinion is. The Illuminati Unmasked aims to teach people about, what is happening in the world, the New World Order, and how we will beat it. But, let's just start out thinking, why is America a captured operation? I mean, why is that your opinion?
It was all part of my growth and development. I had written columns for the university paper when I was in college many years ago. I had started blogging in, 93, 94, somewhere around there. And I've been dabbling in it ever since then. So
you sound perfect right now. This is real last reverberation. So
good. So I had experience in writing and sharing my opinion, and never had a lack of an opinion to share. So I was into alternative media at the time, trying to get to the bottom, trying to find out who was really in charge, who was really in control. Seeing the usual subjects of Alex Jones and so forth, talking about Bilderberg and Trilateral and CFR, and it seemed to make sense, but it didn't seem to have the weight, the control that clicked for me. Hey, this is it. This is the one organization that controls everything. Well, I heard somebody on a program, and his name is, I believe it's a fake name, but his name is Eric Phelps. And so he came on an alternative media podcast, and he blew my mind by giving names, places, and dates of how the Vatican was in control through one of their orders of priesthood known as the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits.
Gotcha.
And so he blew my mind, and I immediately took the interest. I'm writing notes as I'm listening to this guy, and I'm taking down what he's writing, what he's saying, so that I can reference it and verify it myself. And
he was the one who kind of came across the idea of the Vatican assassins. Is that correct?
As a matter of fact, that's the name of his book that he wrote, Vatican Assassins. Now, this is weird, man. I actually live 15 minutes down the road from Eric Phelps. Wow. I did not know that at the time. I heard him on the podcast first, and then tried to reach out to him. I didn't get through to him the first time. I came back to just trying to focus on my own research, and this is where I started to blog about these subjects. And I wrote something that went on another site before its news. It's just kind of a silly alternative to the alternative blog where you get all kinds of crazy subjects, but it's a good place to air out your thoughts.
Right.
And I had something there that took off, kind of like 25,000 hits. Well, for me, I was nobody. 25,000 hits on one of my columns was insane. So that was the impetus to take what I had written and start putting together a book. And that particular column dealt with these topics and the so-called Illuminati. And I'll tell you what, you know what? Here's one of those things that Eric Phelps said that blew me away. That said, this is it. These are the guys who are really in charge. The so-called Illuminati. Illuminati is a buzzword. Everybody in alternative media uses the word
but they
Illuminati.
Yeah, but they don't know the specifics. Yeah,
they have. I almost think that most of them know that it's really a boogeyman term.
Yes, I think you're right.
Today, it is a boogeyman term that at its founding, at its origin, was founded basically by a Jesuit priest.
And explain that. Can we go back to the very beginning? What Jesuit priest was that?
Adam Weishaupt was a Bavarian scholar who started his Jesuit education at 7 years old. And I have this clearly cited in my book. Started at 7, was in the custody of the Jesuits his entire life. Eventually went to teach canon law at Jesuit Ingolstadt, University. And as far as I'm concerned, the chances are excellent that he was secretly ordained a Jesuit priest, someone that had spent that much time in their realm, and eventually went on to teach at a Jesuit facility. Canon law are the precepts by which the Vatican conducts itself in politics.
Now you're at the worst. This is like the worst reverb. Let's see if we can just you want to mute what's coming in or shut off any other kind of audio that's coming into you. Let's see if we try. I'm going to try something.
That would be our Skype.
Yeah, I'm going to end that call. Okay.
Okay.
This interview one. All right, now try it.
How about now? You still with me?
Now you're perfect. This is good. All right, we're on. Let's do it. So you're at Ingolstadt. You are at talking about Adam Weishaupt, possibly. It was trained by the Jesuits, more than likely a Jesuit. And what is his impact? Still there, Johnny? John. Hello. Johnny, you there? I still kind of hear you, Johnny. You there?
Still here.
Okay, good. You sound great. You hear my last question?
Check 1, 2.
I hear you. Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Bring it back.
Okay, cool.
Looks like I was getting.
Okay, so you don't hear me. Let's try this. Johnny? All right. Okay, I guess.
I don't hear you.
Okay, because I hear you. Do you hear me now? You may have something on mute.
Hang on here. All right, let's try this. Okay, let's see here. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. You still sound good.
I'm still not hearing you. Yeah, I've got to be able to interact with this, so I don't know why I'm not.
Do this. Let's try this one more time.
Why I'm not hearing you?
Hear me now, Johnny? Hello.
So I guess all of my audio was coming from that damn Skype call. That's weird.
Oh, that's weird.
Let's see here.
Well, maybe we should just go back to the Skype.
How about you? Is your mic muted?
I hope not. Double check. Let's see.
Should have a.
Let me see. Is my mic
pop
muted?
down screen across the top with the little icons, mic and camera and so forth. Just make sure that you, wherever you see a camera and a mic, it's not red.
Do you hear me now?
So I guess all my audio was coming from that Skype call.
Let's see.
Oh, maybe that was a setting of mine. I had to put my speakers on.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, perfect. We're good to go. Back at it. So we were at the Adam Weishaupt and his influence. What do you think the influence of this Jesuit scholar was from Ingolstadt?
Well, it's important to keep this in mind as exactly what time period this is. This is 1773, which is right after the suppression of the Jesuits. Now, this is a kind of a messy subject, but the history of it on the surface is that the Jesuits had become so hardcore that they were being asked by Catholic countries that were pressuring the Pope to suppress the Jesuits, to get rid of them.
It was an internal thing. And why was that? Let's go back to the beginning of the Jesuit order. And just, if you can discuss for the audience the beginning of orders within the Catholic Church and why the Jesuits stand out, please.
Well, to give the full story on that, it really should go back to Constantine and Nero and Constantine. And after the crucifixion of Christ, early Christians were persecuted terribly by Roman authorities. And your audience may have been familiar with the horrors of being a Christian under Nero, being wrapped in animal skins, thrown to wild animals, being covered in tar and lit on fire to keep Nero's gardens lit. Dramatic difference with the appearance of Constantine, who at the Battle of Milvian Bridge apparently had a vision of Christ, and Christ showed him a sign, the Chi Rho, the two Greek letters. In this sign shall you conquer. And so he supposedly put this sign on the shields of his soldiers and did conquer. And at the time, the Roman Empire was fractionalized, and so they came together. Rome came back together under Constantine as a single emperor. And Constantine apparently seemed to convert to Christianity. Well, that in and of itself was not too devastating, and certainly Christians were glad not to be so terribly persecuted, horribly persecuted. The problem began with the centralization of authority in Christendom. Constantine then began the guy to start setting doctrine, Christian doctrine. And so this eventually became a problem, because if you didn't line up with the way Constantine saw things, well, then you're back on the list of persecution again. And it started with an early sect called the Donatists, who were just a little zealous, but again, it really fits into this category. They were Christians. They had some zealous beliefs, maybe not necessarily proper doctrine, but Constantine began to suppress them in the same way that the Christians used to be suppressed. So this started a trend that really changed the Roman Empire into the Holy Roman Empire, so that by the time of, 500 BC, 500 AD, 538 AD, really Justinian, 538 AD, Justinian made the Bishop of Rome the ultimate arbiter, the Holy See, as it were, for all of Christendom. And so now you have a military political entity taking on the trappings of Christianity, but also hanging on to her pagan past, or very pagan past. where you have an old statue of Jupiter renamed Peter. So you now have this growing of a no longer Christian, kind of a weird syncretistic mix of Christianity, paganism, and a military political entity.
Right.
Well, it came to a point where this military political entity started to, again, drift so far from Christianity that good Christians who were reading the Bible began to get persecuted and prosecuted horribly. And so we're now into 1000 AD, and the Waldensians and the Vaudois, who were true Christians living in the Alps, reading the Bible, preaching the gospel, were themselves victims of crusaders. There was a crusade into the Alps to suppress the Waldensians. And so these were the seeds of a revolt against this new Roman Catholic unity of supposed Christendom. And it gave birth to other protesters like John Wycliffe, roughly about this time, and Jan Hus in Bohemia. Mm-hmm. And so these men started to move away from Roman Catholicism and resist and try to reform the Catholic Church, but protest at the same time. Well, it wasn't until 1517 when an Augustinian monk by the name of Martin Luther had a run-in with a Medici pope, Giovanni de' Medici, who was Pope Leo X, was really a disgusting guy, really a sexual pervert and deviant.
I mean, wasn't the Medici's kind of notorious for that? Weren't they actually a banking family?
It was, you bet. It was all about money and power and had nothing to do with Christianity or faith or religion. And as a matter of fact, his father brought him into the church, made him a bishop, and was he was a teenager. It was embarrassing. Couldn't even join when he became a cardinal. Couldn't even join the College of Cardinals because he was too young to vote.
Interesting.
But he was one there because his father had brought him into it. So right. By the time he made it to become pope, he had said to his confidants, "Hey, we have the papacy. Let's enjoy it." And so as a result, he was spending himself out of the papacy. He had massive debts, and he needed a ploy to go out and wrench more money from Catholic citizens all over Europe. Mm-hmm. And the ploy at the time was to rebuild St. Peter's, which had fallen into disarray and disuse since the time of Constantine. And so in order to do this, he exploited the worst thing of the trust of Catholic citizens. The idea that you could buy your way out of sin. There is this fabrication. Forgive me, I don't mean to put myself at odds with Roman Catholic people, Roman Catholic doctrine. Two different issues: whether or not Roman leadership rules the world from behind the scenes, and the differences between Protestants and Catholic are two separate issues. However, this is an important issue, and it really has sparked the Reformation. The idea of an indulgence, that you could buy your way out of sin. And there was a fabrication known as still known today, purgatory. That once you die, you don't go to stand before Christ in judgment. You go to this holding place, and you can be released from this holding place by the power of the Pope. Well, the Pope decided to sell this power for yourself in the future, if you end up in purgatory, or your loved ones. Heaven forbid, if you should have a child that died of the plague and you were sold that they were in purgatory awaiting for your help, all you had to do is give them money and you would receive an indulgence as a result. Well, this came to a head in Wittenberg, where there was an Augustinian monk and a Dominican friar named Johannes oh my goodness, I had his name and I lost it. Anyway, was 10 Johannes Tetzel, I'm sorry, came back to me. Johannes Tetzel was going around for Leo X, selling these indulgences in a really, snake oil salesman. And Luther was furious because he had a heart for the people and he saw the people being exploited and used. And so he wrote a document with 95 bullets on it about how outrageous this was. And if people are asked, he said, hey, my parishioners are asking me if the Pope has the power to release people from purgatory, why does he not do that based on goodwill? Why is he charging money for this? And really good questions. And it wasn't until Martin Luther himself became a doctor of theology at the College of Wittenberg, where he had access to the Bible himself. Now, prior to this, the Roman Catholic Church had buried the Bible. And they said, look, if you want Christian doctrine, if you want to know about your soul, you come ask us. Well, as Martin Luther began to read this, and simultaneously at this time, a linguist by the name of Desiderius Erasmus had redone a translation of the Bible side by side in Latin and Greek. And he went to the original manuscripts and went away from the Jerome's Latin Vulgate. And so the original manuscripts were showing how many of the Catholic teachings were in error and were being exploited for the purpose of controlling the masses. And this is what upset Martin Luther. And so he took these 95 bullets, these 95 theses against indulgences, and he nailed them to the door of All Saints Cathedral in Wittenberg, which was just basically a call out for his fellow professors to talk about this. And he also sent this to the Archbishop as well as to Tetzel himself as, hey, I dare you to debate this because you're wrong. Well, this is about the same time as the Gutenberg press, which was invented like 30 or 40 years before this. I was like 1450. This is 1517. So 1450, we had the movable type press, which had revolutionized printing. Where previous to this, presses, you actually had to carve out each and every page of a book. And so each template was unique, and it took a lot of time. Well, now you had movable type, small block letters that you could put in a frame, and so publishing was much faster. And so Martin Luther wrote his 95 Theses in Latin as an invitation to other scholars to discuss this. Well, his students adored him. They found this. They translated into German, sent it to the presses, and it was all over Europe like wildfire. And that just plummeted Martin Luther into a situation that he may not have been ready for, but he eventually adopted wholeheartedly, which is to start calling out the abuses of Rome and how the popes, he as a priest had visited Rome and he saw the utter depravity, William. Absolutely. They actually had
he had this ideal of Rome, and when he went to Rome, it was like the opposite. Isn't that true?
That's absolutely right. He had a very rosy ideal of what Rome would be, and instead it was a cesspool. There were brothels specifically dedicated to Catholic clergy. Any sexual indulgence you could imagine. There were just exploitation of the people. At one point, he celebrated Mass with some fellow Italians who actually mocked their audience by saying Mass in Latin, and instead of raising the host and consecrating the host to be the body of Christ, they mocked their congregation and said, in Latin, bread thou art, bread thou will remain. And it was just absolutely shocking to Martin Luther to see this, have a wake-up call. And that was prior to 1517. So this was just the foundation. He eventually was called before Vatican officials in Augsburg and continue to say, listen, I have the Bible and I will recant if you can prove me wrong. He was eventually called before the Holy Roman Emperor himself, Charles V, at the Diet of Worms. And in Worms, it was very difficult for him. He came and he didn't even have a preparation, a speech prepared. And they're like, wait, what did you think you were supposed to be here for? Well, he said, give me 24 hours. I gave him 24 hours, and he just blasted them with an amazing, I mean, at one point, Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, cut him off and tried to stop him, and he kept going. And just amazing courage for his day. He could have been immediately arrested and burned at the stake. In fact, that's exactly what happened 100 years prior to reformer Jan Hus, a Bohemian reformer, who had been invited to a diet to explain himself. He was given a safe passage by the Holy Roman Emperor, and it was revoked. He was arrested and burned at the stake. And they told Martin Luther, this would happen to you if you're not careful. And he went anyway. He went to Worms anyway, and made this stand where he concluded it by saying, I can't go against my conscience. Here I stand, so help me God. And so it was a shot heard around the world. And here's the kicker. It was the movable type press that was the death knell. Martin Luther then was basically kidnapped by his benefactor, Frederick the Wise, the Elector of Saxony, who secretly had a very sweet spot for Martin Luther. He really adored him, but he couldn't really be open about it because he was a high German official. So he kidnapped Martin Luther and put him in Wartburg Castle, where Martin Luther had all the spare time, and he went undercover, and so he translated the New Testament into German, vernacular German. And what really was devastating for the Catholic Church was this translation went to the printing presses and was across Germany and Europe like lightning. And now the people were reading for themselves what was previously forbidden, and Rome's control was lost. This was a serious, serious problem. They no longer could use their own iron fist to keep the people under control. And instead what they did was they came out with a counter-reformation. A young Spaniard by the name of Ignacio Lopez, who was an aristocrat, was wounded in the Battle of Pamplona. It was a turf war between France and Spain. And his one leg was broken, his other leg was shattered. It was very, very difficult for him as a soldier because he was laid up in bed, and now his dreams of martial glory were lost. And so he was devastated. He had a terrible moment where he didn't know what he was going to do with himself. And at this point, he had visions of Christ, and particularly Mary and the Virgin. And he had a new direction in life. He decided that he was going to take this terrible threat that came from Martin Luther and the Reformation and Jean Calvin, also known as John Calvin, and he was going to fight them for the Pope. He was going to actually go back to the Holy Land, win Jerusalem for the Pope, and destroy the Reformation. Well, he put himself together. He in his convalescence, he went before the Black Virgin of Montserrat and dedicated himself. He put his sword before the statue of the Black Virgin and dedicated himself. He spent time in a cave outside of Montserrat and just brutalized himself. And it was here that he came up with his own spiritual disciplines that really revolutionized orders. This is what set them apart. The spiritual disciplines turned.
What were they? What do you know the specifics? It was like
they were a series of
flagellation,
meditations.
And all that stuff.
Yes, self-denial, flagellation, withholding food and water from yourself. This goes back to ancient Templar mysticism and Gnosticism, and beyond the Templars learned it from Essenes and pagan mystics, and that was Loyola's background. The Templars went underground in 1307, and they were all hidden throughout Spain, and so Loyola had been exposed to this, and he drew on that to create his spiritual disciplines, to brutalize his own self and his own body, to deny everything, to reach out for a higher cause, and it turned him into a super weapon. And all of the Jesuits that are able to attain this level are deeply deny themselves. And by the way, to get an idea of this, this is where Marine Corps boot camp comes from, and I'm a former Marine. I will tell you for a fact, it's about the destruction of self to serve a higher cause. The problem is you absolutely have to believe in that higher cause.
Right.
If you don't, it doesn't work. So this turned Loyola into a super weapon, and they began to insinuate themselves into the Reformation and to take over countries. I mean, take over countries, whatever way, regicide, assassination. They immediately reached out to Asia, and guess where they went once they got into Asia? They became the Chinese emperor's astronomer, mathematician. They wrote the calendars. William, they took over reality. They began to change and warp reality so that suddenly so-called science and so-called astronomy were at odds with the Bible. It was nothing more than an ingenious attack upon the veracity of the Bible. You have the Bible showing up Rome as being flawed, as being improperly controlling of the world as we knew it, not just Christians, of enslaving the world. And the only way to attack that would be to discredit the Bible itself. And oh, by the way, as you had these Christians, there's a great work called John Fox's Book of Martyrs. And it shows how for hundreds of years, the force that has horribly murdered and tortured Christians has been the Roman Catholic Church. And so you had this understanding of Rome as literally the great harlot, the whore of Babylon, as spoken of in Daniel 2, 7, 9, Revelation 11, 13, 17, 19. Clearly at this time, especially when Martin Luther took his stand, the idea that Rome was the great harlot of Babylon was very strong and came back. And so you needed to rewrite reality. And that reality includes science, archaeology, the fabricating and the recreation of the nation of Israel. Because once you bring Israel back as a nation, you suddenly say, wait a minute, Israel is needed for prophecy to fulfill itself, when in reality, Rome has already fulfilled those prophecies. As I said, in Revelation, in regards to persecution of the church, of the seals, of the martyrs, of the fifth seal and the martyrs reaching out for justice, and who the Antichrist was. When Christ says, many will come in my name and say, I am he. And so you have Jesuits insinuating themselves into Christian prophecy and education and saying, oh, this is going to be Islam. The Antichrist is going to be Hitler. The Antichrist was Napoleon. Here's the problem with that, William. You've heard that, I'm sure, that Obama is the Antichrist, Hitler, Napoleon, right, yes. All Antichrist, Stalin. Here's the problem. They don't fulfill the scriptures in regards to how Jesus said, they will come in my name. Not one of those individuals said, I am Jesus, I am the Messiah. But that absolutely fits the office of the papacy, where each and every pope says, I am the vicar of Christ himself on earth. When they write ex cathedra or speak ex cathedra, they capitalize their pronouns. They are equal, each and every pope, the vicar of Christ, considers himself equal with God himself. And so there you have the great harlot with the horrible blasphemies written upon her. That fits the prophecy. And so you have these brilliant Jesuits, oh my goodness, astronomers, mathematicians, secret Christian pastors writing books, rewriting reality, so that now
Did they bounce
You
up
erase.
against Galileo? I mean, it was right around that time, right? Was it the Jesuits?
He was theirs. Copernicus, Galileo, they worked for Rome. They worked for the Vatican. The so-called suppression of Galileo was just for plausible deniability. Do you want to know how the Vatican actually suppressed people? They ripped your innards out while you were still alive. They pulled your arms backwards until they popped out of their sockets. They pulled your skin off. This is what the Inquisition did, brother.
Mhm.
This was not how you suppress. So Galileo was not suppressed. He was put under house arrest.
Gotcha.
It was a fake arrest. It was flawed for the purpose of giving plausible deniability, because Rome had to rewrite reality.
Right. I mean,
To
they
start
maintained
with
that
Copernicus-
reality that the sun, the Earth was the center of the solar system and the universe, right? And
Exactly.
They kept that going for I don't know how
Exactly.
long that was maintained publicly,
It
until
wasn't
Galileo was
until
proved.
after. You bet.
Right.
Copernicus, when did Copernicus write? Like 1546, I want to say.
Both were right around
Right,
the 15th century, yeah.
right in the heart of the Counter-Reformation. Just as because it was clearly an agenda to literally rewrite reality. I was pulling up some information on a Jesuit in the early 1900s named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Right, yeah.
De Chardin was all over the place. He's considered the founder of the New Age, the father of the New Age. Do you know that de Chardin very adamantly tried to put together Darwinianism with Christianity
Nope.
to give Darwin absolutely? And as a matter of fact, he tried so hard that he was behind two archaeological hoaxes, Piltdown Man and Peking Man. That's because the real agenda of the Jesuits is to help shore up the ridiculous fabrication of Darwinian evolution. So you now have Jesuits or Jesuit-trained Catholic priests like Georges Lemaitre, who was friends with Albert Einstein, who fabricated the foolishness of the Big Bang to shore up this heliocentric spinning globe Earth cosmic accident to destroy your reality and rewrite your reality to put you in an actual matrix of lies, the purpose of which was to, rather than to continue to burn Bibles and burn Protestants, they couldn't keep up with them anymore because of the Gutenberg press. They brilliantly rewrote reality to discredit the Bible.
And some of those like the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, these wars that came out of the Reformation were ferocious, just slaughtering.
People have no
cities.
idea. I saw, what's his name? Panetta. Leon Panetta.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I have it in my video. Panetta described our war on terror as a new 30 Years' War.
Wow.
There's only a tiny group of people that would understand what he's saying, that he's talking Jesuit language, and he would know.
He came out of Santa Clara University, yeah.
That's right. That's right. And he himself, how do you get to be a nobody congressman in California, to become Bill Clinton's chief of staff,
He became
chairman of the Office of
CIA,
Management
right?
and Budget,
Yeah.
the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Secretary of Defense? Are you kidding me? One of the most powerful individuals ever in this country. And he's saying the war on terror is going to be another 30 Years' War. That's because it's completely manufactured, the Hegelian dialectic. After 9/11, the treasonously named Patriot Act was written by a Vietnamese Roman Catholic professor at law at Jesuit Georgetown.
That's right. Viet Dinh or whatever his name was.
The Patriot Act
Right.
was written by Viet Dinh, was waiting the minute 9/11 was concluded to push this country into a slave police state. It was absolutely fabricated.
But to say that 9/11 was like a 30 Years' War is a really ferocious, I mean, it's an incredibly potent statement because
People have no idea. People have no idea that it wasn't until after the Reformation that nations began to stand up and against this octopus-like control. When you see Spectre and Hydra and all these things in the movies, That's the Jesuits. That's Rome. That's what they're implying without telling you, because they literally had their hands have their hand in everything and total control. And you had nations revolting against that and rebelling against that. And so Rome would react. And here's what made the Holy Roman Empire different from the previous Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire didn't
which was
have its
neither
own
holy
army.
nor Roman nor really an empire.
Yeah. It used other nations' militaries.
Right.
When the Pope wants you, he'll use the militaries of his henchmen, of his puppets. And that's where it comes into what I realize when you see these things going on all over the world, where concerns about atrocities or war crimes, things that make you embarrassed to be an American. Abu Ghraib, great example. It had nothing to do with the United States military and the United States Army. It was traitors in our own military and government taking orders from the Vatican to further the Inquisition. And so you have this going on again and again, where you have the Vatican now run. The Jesuits were so incredibly successful, they murdered popes to have complete and total control. That's how dedicated they are. So that now they are in total control. They use the militaries of other nations to do their vicious, dirty, evil deeds. That nation
can you
gets
provide
the
a
black
couple
eye.
examples of that? Wasn't there the Spanish Inquisition, that was notorious. What were the other cities?
Well, the Inquisition in general. It was the Rome, the Vatican itself never really put anyone to death. It was the government of that nation. We see Spanish Inquisition, the Inquisition in France, the Inquisition in England, when England was Roman Catholic at the time.
That's right.
When there was someone that was seen as an enemy of Rome, the Inquisition in that person's host nation, Rome is the Vatican, is a tiny sovereign city-state,
right,
secretly controlling governments from across Europe, across everywhere. And so it was those governments that would do the evil deeds.
Right. So bringing it up to the present, we have about 10, 15 minutes left. You talked about Panetta, Viadin, these other people, and particularly that I think of interest is we're looking at a potential somebody, the Clintons came in who, Bill Clinton had a Jesuit education. What's your opinion on what's happening now? What's the interest of the Catholic Church? And what do you think about the Clintons?
Completely controlled. The Clintons were installed on a mountain of cocaine by the CIA. The CIA was and is absolutely controlled by the Jesuits and by the Vatican, founded by Roman Catholic Knight of Malta, William Donovan. Bookends. I like to use the bookends to show how much the Vatican controls the CIA. William Donovan founded the OSS in 1944. It was given the Order of St. Gregory by Pope Pius XII, and shoot it all the way up to today. How many different directors have Jesuit ties?
Or the Knights of Malta. Isn't the Knights of Malta another Catholic?
Yes, Knights of Malta. Even supposed non-Catholic directors like Allen Dulles. His brother, John Foster Dulles, was Secretary of State. John Foster Dulles had a son, Avery Dulles, recently passed away, one of the most powerful Jesuit cardinals in America.
Interesting.
And these are supposed non-Roman Catholics, right? To today, the director of the CIA, John O'Brennan, the drone executioner, Roman Catholic, went to Fordham, Jesuit Fordham University, and was sworn in not by Barack Hussein Obama, but by devout Roman Catholic Joe Biden on a constitution minus the Bill of Rights. So Rome is in total control of the CIA back to Hillary Clinton. The Clinton and Bush criminal dynasties were installed on a mountain of cocaine going into Mena, Arkansas through the 80s and 90s. And so that established their dynasties. And of course, Bill Clinton was, just as you mentioned, indoctrinated at Jesuit Georgetown. It's where he met Carroll Quigley, the guy that wrote just Tragedy and Hope, that tome about how there's a secret organization that controls the world, that controls banking and finance, that controls both political parties. Well, Bill Clinton is supposedly a Baptist, and yet he took communion. He took communion from a Roman Catholic priest, I believe, in Africa, which is strictly forbidden unless you yourself are a Catholic. Hillary Clinton is, I believe, she's supposedly Methodist, but she was raised in the epicenter of Jesuit community organizing in Chicago. And now she herself has picked as her vice presidential running mate, Jesuit-trained, devout Roman Catholic, former Virginia senator, I think he's still senator, be senator until he became vice president, Tim Kaine.
That's right.
So, and of course you have the other side, that clown, Donald Trump, who takes issues that Americans are upset about and turns them into a soap opera, turns them into a morning talk show, humiliating, embarrassing, illegal immigration, debt, security, defense. These are issues that are clearly the debt and immigration, illegal immigration, two issues that are destroying the country. Free trade. All these issues are purposely destroying the country. They continue to destroy the country. Doesn't matter which party. Trump was trained at Fordham for 2 years, and he left Fordham, went to University of Pennsylvania because the Jesuits decided he was going to get his bona fides, going to get his plausible deniability. Well, the Jesuits control both. They control Fordham openly. They control the University of Pennsylvania secretly. He also had his daughter, Ivanka, go to University of Pennsylvania. His son, Eric, however, went openly to Georgetown, got his degree at Georgetown. He's now in the Georgetown School of Business. So the Jesuits, the Vatican, they control everything. I had a couple of my writers do up the connections from Vatican to vaccines and Bill Gates. The connection's sickening. I have a...
What's the agenda of the Vatican and vaccines? Why are they interested in that agenda?
Exactly. For instance, I had my writer just write to me, Christopher Elias leads the Gates Foundation's efforts to combat extreme poverty through grants as a president of the Global Development Plan on behalf of the Gates Foundation. Christopher Elias received his medical degree from Jesuit Creighton University. The agenda, why are the Jesuits involved? It's exactly what the alternative community has said, to poison and control humanity, populations. They are that twisted and sick that everything you believe in this community that concerns you, the chemtrails, the vaccines, the fluoride, oh yeah, they absolutely are trying to poison and control you. And above that agenda are the Jesuits. They are absolutely evil. When I see Jesuits that are just kindly theologians and doctors and philosophers just trying to help it's a lie. Everything is a lie. Everything in their mouth is on. Malachi Martin, when he was alive, he was on Coast to Coast like a million times. Very popular guy, kindly guy. You just listen to him, you just fall in love with the guy, and all kinds of great stories about helping people being possessed, exorcisms, and so forth. Malachi Martin, absolute liar. Everything out of that guy's mouth was it, and he supposedly left the Jesuit order, right? But he remained a Catholic priest, but left the Jesuit order. I read his book, Jesuits, and I was sickened at the propaganda. He paints this picture of how the Jesuits suddenly turned. The Jesuits suddenly joined communism in the 60s. The Jesuits suddenly went against Rome. The Vatican suddenly turned and became satanic. I'm sorry, brother. It was always that way. And he was doing that, rewriting reality to give current Roman Catholics something to continue to believe in. Very, very, very important, because it became so obvious that the Jesuits were doing crazy, evil things, picking up rifles.
That's very common. It's very common in religions. People whitewash the past and put a rose covering, or
and that's. But you need but you need Catholics to continue to believe in the church. You need to be able to tug on their loyalty, even though it's clear the church and the Jesuits are doing.
Now, where did Malachi Martin get his? What was the largesse of his life from? The Catholic Church. That's where he got his training. That's where
Absolutely.
he got big languages.
Absolutely. And you
All
see his
came out of
his
training.
books,
Yeah.
very popular, climb off the charts.
Oh yeah,
They
all
were
from
promoted.
Catholic. I know Catholic priests who are in Rome. Their lives are, they live the greatest life ever. Imagine going to college and learning all the time without ever having to pay any debts and getting free room and board. It's
Well,
really
how about
astonishing.
any sexual perversion you could think of?
Mhm.
Have you seen the documentary movie Spotlight?
Yes.
That talks about the how predator priests, 200 times, 200 examples of priests preying, sodomizing young boys, raping little girls. And what they would do is, as parents started to get upset, is they would take that animal and send him to a new diocese where he could sodomize and rape anew and at will, again and again. How many of these animals, these predators, have gone to the electric chair?
Zero.
None of them. How
Yeah.
many have been imprisoned? What, 3? 2?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And we're
It's a
talking
huge cover.
hundreds.
That Spotlight was the Spotlight. It was a good movie, but it was really just on one city because that happened
Oh my goodness!
in
Yeah,
many
Boston,
major
right?
cities
Boston, yeah, Massachusetts, yeah.
all over the
Can you
place.
imagine? And so it begs the question, William, are you kidding me? You actually clearly want these predatory priests to abuse as many American kids as possible. It is a sick, evil, twisted agenda. In the same way that why would the CIA kidnap American citizens, conduct experiments on them with LSD to practice mind control, to flood American streets with cocaine and heroin? That is the worst actions an enemy of this nation have ever committed. And that's our own intelligence agency. We're not talking Germany, Japan, any enemy this country has ever faced. Nothing compares with the evil that the CIA has done to American citizens. And no one's talking about it, and no one is asking why.
It's still happening to this day.
Fletcher Prouty, WHY, why? Why would they slaughter a sitting president, blow his brains out in broad daylight? It's a coup.
Yeah.
Because it's controlled by a malignant foreign entity that hates you, America.
Well, we're coming to an end, Johnny. I really appreciate all of the information that you shared with me and the audience. I really recommend this book. Where can people find your writing and your book?
JohnnyCirucci.com, JohnnyCirucci.com. My latest writings for myself and my writers, great guys on my blog. You can get Illuminati Unmasked on Amazon.com, and there's a link directly from my site to Amazon, and working on the sequel right now.
Awesome. When can we look forward to seeing that?
For the next couple of weeks, and I also going to give a plug for my own show, Resistance Rising on Blog Talk Radio. You can just find that on the buttons, Johnny on the Air on my website. Hopefully, William, I can have it out within the next couple of weeks. It is crazy how hard it is to write a book.
Send me something over, and we'll go over it when it comes out. I'd love to discuss that with you. When you finish up your book, you talked about Resistance Rising. Can you share with us about what your opinion or approach is as far as the current challenges?
You're doing it right now. This is it. This is Resistance Rising. People who are dedicated to truth, who have a fearless engagement with truth, particularly people that I will say I consider myself, my own protection as a Christian, I try to discipline myself as much as possible to be a good Christian, to be a faithful Christian, to not be a scumbag. Who killed John F. Kennedy? Well, the CIA killed him, the Vatican killed him, the Jesuits killed him. Really, John Kennedy killed himself because he was living like a reprobate. He made it easy. He was screwing anything that moved. So his own sins were what finally pulled the trigger on him. If you can be as dedicated as you can to truth, if you, for instance, are a Christian, be as dedicated as you are to that Christian living, to being honest and open and dedicated to truth, truth gets out. Here's the crazy thing. They control everything. All the intelligence agencies, all the banks, all the militaries, all the countries, all of them. Russia, United States, France, England, all of them. And it's a house of cards because they have to do it in secret. Nobody knows they're in control. And they never in a million years could possibly have the numbers to fight a popular uprising. So as this information gets out, it is the death knell. They will try to suppress it. They have total control. They can control the numbers. They can control the reach, but they can't control everything. They are not all powerful. So as we continue to just try to be true and right and do the right thing, they can't combat that. Getting this information out, the best thing that can happen is that people on the inside start to get this information, William, and that then you have white hats, people inside the machine turning on the machine, and you'll see things start to crumble from within. It is a literal house of cards, and this right here is Resistance Rising.
Awesome. Johny, what's the title of your new book? Do you have a title?
Oh, right now it was Everything You Know Is a Lie, because I was going to get into this altered reality, but I got into so many crazy things about hidden and secret history. It's going to be renamed something like Hidden Secret History. Awesome. Because there's so much information that I have uncovered that nobody is aware of in regards to what we talked about today, the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, the Jesuits coming in and attacking your very reality. So it's probably going to have to be several parts, and the first part's going to be something like secret or hidden history.
Awesome. Well, I really look forward to it, and I will definitely verify to the audience that you have tons of excellent information in this book, Illuminati Unmasked. And Johny Cirucci, thank you very much for your time. Had a great show.
My pleasure. Look forward to seeing you again soon, William.
All right. God bless. Take care.